So, our first slimy scam that we're going to cover is what we call the deal of a lifetime. So, imagine you see the perfect apartment, it's in the right neighborhood, it's stunning, the photos are beautiful, you can imagine where you're going to put your bed, and the price is just too good to be true. This is like the rental deal of a lifetime, right? Or is it? Paula, can you tell us a little bit about how finding the deal of a lifetime could actually be a scam in disguise?
Absolutely. So a good rule of thumb here is if the price seems too good to be true, it probably is. I would say for sure it is. Scammers will advertise an attractive listing with an incredible asking rent. We're talking about a fully furnished unit in downtown Vancouver. All the utilities are included, and the price is just $1,500. That's like super good to be true, right? So they're looking to take advantage of people who don't have a lot of money to begin with, are in a vulnerable situation. Maybe they're new to the city and need a place to live ASAP, or they need to rent a cheaper place because they've lost their job even.
So, are there any good deals out there right now?
Absolutely. There are really great deals right now to find, especially since COVID hit. The landlords are starting to bring the prices down across Vancouver and even more in certain neighborhoods like downtown Vancouver. In the last year, we've seen landlords start to offer rental incentives like 1 month of free rent, discounted rent, free parking included, and even allowing pets because they need to be more competitive now that the vacancy is higher and the demand is lower.
hmm And we also have a great article about some of the current rental incentives out there. So, check it out via the pop up right, that's coming up on your screen right now. So, Paula, how can you tell what you're looking at is a fair price or if someone is trying to scam you?
That's a good question, Mel. So the first step is definitely to set a realistic budget and stay within that to prevent you from getting attracted to fake listings. You can set a realistic budget by, well, come on, you're a student, you know this already, by doing your homework, of course. You should know the rent averages in the city and neighborhood that you're planning on renting in.
Yeah, that's true. And at Live Rent, we publish monthly rent reports. That is our homework. We make them for Vancouver, Toronto, and now Montreal. And they show the average cost and rent in the city and break it down by neighborhood as well. So you can find out which is the cheapest place on average to rent. Paula, I know you read these rent reports, but how can students actually find this useful for them?
Well, if a student is looking for a two-bedroom apartment for rent in Vancouver that they want to split with their friend, for example, they need to take a look at the average cost of rent for that suite type in that neighborhood. That will be a realistic rent amount that they will eventually pay. So let's take a look now at what the average rent for a one bedroom was in the city in April to give you just a quick overview. So as you can see in the screen there, downtown Vancouver had the rental price of $1972, while South Vancouver had an average of 1733. So always make sure you keep these averages in mind when you're looking at listings, because if you find a listing that is, $300 less than that, you should do some more research. What I really recommend people is that they look for listings within the same building or area to see the average rent. You can actually do that on Live Rent very easily. So just check out our buildings page and see all the units available for rent inside it. It's also a great idea for you to take a look at that because you can be more competitive and have a little negotiation margin whenever you're talking to landlords.
For sure. So, what kind of research are you talking about? Like, this is actually turning into a little bit of homework.
Yes, definitely. It is. Google is super your friend. So Google the phone number provided with the listing and see what comes up. Do a reverse Google image search if you're suspicious about the photos. The photos should be nice and professional, but if they're too professional, something could be wrong. You can also ask to see it in person if possible, or ask for a video tour if you're being COVID safe, or even if you're not in the city yet.
That's awesome. So to summarize, if a deal seems too good to be true, it probably isn't, or it probably is. It's almost kind of like dating. If they seem super perfect in the beginning and like, oh, nothing's wrong, you're definitely like questioning them already. Like your red flags are going off.
Yes.
So you can do, so guys, definitely do some research just to be sure it's not a scam. And on that note, let's move on to our next scam. Paula, should a renter be suspicious if the landlord won't tell you the address of the rental? I would think that the address should be shown, but is that always the case?
Yes and no. Well, sometimes a reluctance to share the address of an apartment is indeed suspicious. It could be pointing to the building not being real or even not belonging to the person who is listing it. However, sometimes the landlord won't tell you the unit number. That can be because it's their home that they're renting out and they want some privacy, or they could be just be cautious of putting their whole address out on the internet.
That's fair. So, how do you know then if someone being shy about their address means that they are a scammer or not?
Your priority to protect yourself in this case should be to view the listing. This is the easiest way to confirm if the listing is legitimate. You can schedule a viewing, either live or virtual, with the landlord or property manager. If they're legit, professionals will be willing and prepared to set up a viewing with you. Of course, the best way to avoid this scam is to browse on LiveRent, where over 90% of our listings are verified. So we've mentioned it quickly before, but verified listings on LiveRent is an easy, no-brainer way to make sure it's a real place. We are a safe and trusted community of renters and verified landlords. And when I'm saying verified, it means that our team has personally made sure that the landlord is a real person by matching a selfie to the government ID, as I mentioned before. And when a listing is verified, it means that we either saw documents like the land title or we sent them a postcard to the address so they could prove that they actually own that listing, right?
hmm Our verification features are actually really fantastic. We put a lot of work and effort into keeping our community safe, and you really won't find that anywhere else. So, thank you, Paula, and your team. So, the next slimy scam we're looking at is the Send Money Now scheme. Paula, obviously, you need to pay for rent and deposits, right? So, why should we be cautious of sending people money who ask for it?
Yes, of course, you have to pay the rent. And in BC, landlords can ask for a security deposit, which can be up to the cost of half month's rent. Plus, if this is a pet-friendly place and you do have a pet, they can also ask for a pet deposit, which is additional half month rent up front. So the maximum deposit you could pay will be a full month of rent on top of the cost of rent. However, here's the thing, until you have signed the lease, you don't have to pay anything. It is very suspicious when the landlord seems to be very urgent in demanding the money, maybe even before you sign the lease. They might ask for more money than it's legally allowed, so make sure you do know your rights. Or sometimes they do ask for an urgent wire transfer or viewing and application fees, which are not legal at all.
hmm So, why should they be suspicious about asking for the money quickly, though? Like, what is happening there?
So a professional landlord and property manager understands that tenants should not be completely pressured into making a snap decision and handling over money right away. So they do know that they need time to think about their decision, right? So if you feel like you're being pressured somehow to hand over money fast, try to communicate with the landlord. Let them know you're good to proceed, but you won't pay anything until you sign the lease. And if they don't have an appropriate response, then you should just avoid the listing and move on to finding another one on LiveRent.
hmm So, don't get caught up in handing money over right away. Know your rights and definitely take a closer look at things, is what I'm getting at here. So, moving on to the next scam, we went from one where a landlord asked for too much money, and now we're moving on to one where the landlord asked for way too much information. Paula, can you tell us a little bit more about this kind of scam?
Of course, it's not just your money that scammers want, they also want your personal information. This is a case where it's extremely important to know your rights as a tenant and what a landlord can ask for and what they cannot ask for. Bottom line, until you decide that you are ready to move forward with a lease, you do not have to share any information with the landlord you don't feel comfortable with. The scammers might try to ask information like your passport info, social insurance number, credit card number, or bank account information.
But the landlord they do need some information, right? So what can they ask for and what should we give them?
So once you do decide on a property, the landlord may ask you to show documentation that proves you are able to afford the rent payments. So they don't need this information until after you decide to move forward with an application, though.
Okay. And what should we do to protect ourselves for this kind of scam?
First and foremost, be informed and know that in Canada, landlords can ask you for information like your SIN number, a copy of your driver's license, a passport, or income tax assessment. But they can only use these to confirm your identity and make sure you can afford to pay rent. You're not obligated to provide it. So if you feel a little bit unsure, maybe ask to see their identity proof and proof that they own the property they are renting out to you. Plus, you can sidestep this by using LiveRent. You can securely upload the necessary documents to your profile where it's kept saved and encrypted. And then when you decide to apply to a listing, a landlord will be able to see at a glance all the information that confirms your ability to pay the rent and your ID.